Hello, welcome back to my Thoughtful Thursdays video channel where we talk about important topics both inside and outside the church. As always, please make sure you're subscribed and turn on your notifications below to make sure that you see videos like these in the future. This week we're going to be talking about the opioids crisis. It probably isn't a surprise to all of you that our country is in a national crisis with the overuse and abuse of opioids, both prescription and non-prescription. Now Ellen, my wife, and I started watching the Netflix show called Dopesick, and it really got me to start thinking about this crisis that we are in our country, this epidemic. Essentially, and as fast as I can tell you, here is the dilemma that unfolds. Opioids used to be a special class of medicine that was only prescribed for short-term use for pain. They are narcotics. Now, traditionally, they are used as sedatives. However, a major drug company owned by one family, the Sackler family, called Purdue Pharma, through manipulation, through lying, and through pushing their way and their weight around, got the FDA to have a more lax label for this narcotic. This narcotic was called Oxycontin. Now, they told people that Oxycontin was not as addictive as other opioids, that it was in some way a miracle drug that was very safe for people to use to treat pain. They said that in less than 1% of the cases of the population would it become an addiction. That would be a miracle. No longer was this class of drug that previously had had a stricter drug label only used for severe pain. Now it was given to people with shoulder pain, mild dentistry work, backaches, etc. Pharmacy companies spent millions upon millions of dollars to get their drug into pharmacies across the country. They had sales reps talking to doctors across the country to get them to write prescriptions for Oxycontin, this safe alternative to these other harmful opioids. Doctors did. They wrote lots of prescriptions. People became addicted. The entire time, it was super addictive. It was not a safer form of a narcotic. It was a narcotic. And since the drug worked so well to control pain, people were happy with it in the beginning. They finally felt like they could have their old lives back again until the pain came back. And they needed more Oxycontin to keep the pain at bay. At first, the drug didn't last the entire time that it was supposed to. Then people's bodies got used to it and needed more of the drug to get the same effect. Purdue Pharmacy was like, this is all normal, don't worry, just start upping people's doses. Better yet, don't just up their doses, start people at a higher dose in the beginning. We have to be able to control people's pain, give them as much Oxycontin as they need. All the while, Purdue Pharma is making a boatload of money. Every day, people across the United States were becoming addicted to opioids. Your friends, your family members, people that you know right now, people that are watching this video right now are addicted to some form of an opioid. You might not even know. This is a real issue. This is not a subject that I take lightly. People need this drug to be able to survive. That's how addictions work. And Purdue Pharma said that people could just quit cold turkey, but clearly people couldn't. Now, across the country, people have a chemical dependence on this drug that they can't just quit, no matter how hard they try. It is almost impossible to just quit a narcotic when you are chemically dependent cold turkey. For anyone who would have the tendency to say, just say no, just walk away, it isn't an actual reality for the majority of people. Now, in the wake of the opioid epidemic, it is much harder to get a prescription for an opioid, which means that people who could just go to their doctor, who could just talk to them about their back pain and get a prescription for Oxycontin and attempt to control their own addiction at their own time, were now cut off. They still needed that drug. I want to give you some statistics about opioids in general. In the year 2000, the amount of overall drug overdoses was about 17,500 in the 1 year. In 2018, just 8 years later, that number skyrocketed to 67,400 people. By far, the majority of those overdoses were overdoses from opioids. That is nearly quadruple the rate of 2000. In 2017, healthcare providers across the United States wrote more than 191 million prescriptions for opioid pain medication. That is a rate of 58.7 prescriptions per 100 people. Guys, that is a lot of pain medicine. It gets worse. 1 in 3 Medicare Part D beneficiaries, people who rely on drugs through Medicare, received a prescription of an opioid in 2016. 1 in 3. Roughly 21 to 29% of patients prescribed opioids for chronic pain misuse them. That's huge. That isn't just a small group of people who are ruining pain pills for the rest of the country. That's not even the worst. Here is the truly terrifying part. Between 8 and 12% of people using an opioid for chronic pain develop an opioid use disorder. People I know that are listening might be like, yeah, Kyle, so what? It's just people doing drugs. I don't do drugs. I took DARE. Just say no to drugs. I know better. Gosh, doctors across the country gave people these drugs. Patients were told they weren't addictive. Here is where it does affect you. The CDC estimates that total economic burden of prescription opioid misuse in the United States is right at $78.5 billion a year. That amount of money includes the cost of healthcare, of lost productivity at work, of addiction treatment, and of the criminal justice system. This crisis has a cost for our entire country. Watching Dopesick has been absolutely devastating. I've now known people who have died of opioid overdoses. This isn't some faraway problem. These are our friends. These are our loved ones. We have a problem in our country. People are in pain in more than just one way. We must reshape how we view addiction because what we were taught growing up isn't the whole picture. Nancy Reagan told us all to just say no to drugs. Yeah, Nancy, it just isn't that easy when your doctor prescribes you the very thing that you're addicted to. You didn't want this. You didn't want to be stealing from your family just so that you could survive. I don't have all the answers, but I know one thing. We err on the side of kindness. This life is hard, man. It's really hard. People are hurting, both physically and emotionally. The opioid epidemic isn't just some random people that are out there that's far away. It isn't just some junkies. This is someone's kid. This is someone's sister. That's someone's mom that we're talking about. I do feel like I have to say this. Addiction is a disease. It must be dealt with accordingly. And since this is my channel, I have to juxtapose my words right now and how we're even talking with how we as a nation dealt with the black community in America during the crack epidemic of the 1980s. It was back during that time that we started the war on drugs. We started mass incarcerating people who were addicts. However, if you look closely, the people didn't look like I do. They were targeted. At the very same time that black people were being busted and thrown into disproportionately long jail sentences, we must remember that nobody was busting up the Wall Street parties. Please don't try and tell me that a certain white powdery substance wasn't being used and abused at those parties. But oddly enough, police weren't busting those ones up. Both sides used drugs at roughly the same rate. However, crack cocaine was labeled as being far worse and got more jail time. There was a stigma attached to crack cocaine. And once again, addiction is horribly devastating. Nobody is saying it isn't. However, in the 1980s, we didn't personify addiction to being people who had a disease. They were criminals. Throw them in jail. Just say no. Friends, that was somebody's mother. That was somebody's father. Each person that we mass incarcerated had a family that loved them and wanted them to survive. And it's interesting because now we have this epidemic that is disproportionately affecting the white community. However, I don't hear mass calls to throw everyone in jail. I think that's pretty interesting and pretty telling of our society. Just some food for thought. We err on the side of kindness. We recognize people's humanity. We see the brokenness in people, absolutely. Yet we also can recognize their greatness. And we recognize right now that there are a whole bunch of people in the United States that are on a substance that was not their fault. Nobody asked for this. In fact, one of the most startling stats that I read when I was preparing for this video is that 80% of heroin users started out abusing prescription pills. So what do we do about it? What do I do? Well, I find a local organization that is helping to reduce harm in people who are addicts. I donate to them. They are doing the real work. They are providing clean needles, which keeps people from getting diseases. They are doing free drug testing where people can bring in their pills without consequences and have them tested for things like fentanyl. Ellen and I donate money every month to support JOLT Harm Reduction because I thoroughly believe in what they are doing. They are actively saving lives and giving new life 50 people daily. This is happening right now, friends. There are a lot of cruel people in the world. People are lacing drugs like OxyContin with fentanyl, which is meant to kill people. People are so cruel. They are preying on addicts who have a chemical dependency, who need a drug to survive, and they are killing them for it. What an ugly part of humanity that shows. JOLT Harm Reduction will test people's pills for traces of fentanyl. They are saving lives. And they find fentanyl right here in Peoria. That's right here in Peoria, where I live. Gosh, please help. First, try to change the way that we think about addiction. Try to have a more humane response. If your response is something like this, those junkies deserve to die, then I'm sorry, but wow, what a heartless position that has no real base in reality. Second, give your time, your energy, your money to an organization that is already doing this stuff. You won't regret it. You will save lives. Friends, that is all the time that we have this week. Join me back here next week as we take a look at transgender people in sports. Please be prepared to hear more questions than answers. I'll see you back here next week. Same time, same place.